Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Devan Kline of Burn Boot Camp. Devan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Listen, Cameron, I'm excited to be here, and I love what you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So I would like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, no, I had a rough one. I'll put it that way. I
Mm,
grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, kind of. When I was about 3 years old, my mom picked up, and we moved from Michigan to Missouri to Arizona to California to Washington State, back to California, back to Arizona before, around fifth or sixth grade, I ended up back in Michigan. And my dad is a great guy at heart, but, an abusive alcoholic,
mm,
a great athlete that ended his career early because he got into, substance abuse. And it was tough. Like I met my wife Morgan when I was 12. And,
wow.
a lot of times when things would go down at the house, it was no stranger to have, the police over every weekend, just, with the domestic violence disputes and things like that. And so I would kind of escape to Morgan's house. It was either the ball field and
Yeah.
I'd make sure I just made my escape there or to Morgan's house. And so, yeah, we met when we were 12 and that's like my high school sweetheart. It's like puppy love for me. And, she's always been my rock. So when we met at 12, it's like, we went to junior high together. I actually wrote her a letter in 8th grade. I was like, I'm going to marry Morgan Kline, even though she denied me for or Morgan Stevens at the time, even though she denied me for 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And that ended up happening. Went through high school, like I said, just with that really toxic home life, trying to stay out of there as much as possible. Great athlete, ended up playing at a high level in baseball, basketball. Ended up getting a scholarship to go to Central Michigan University, and then fortunate enough to play a couple years in the minor leagues with the San Francisco Giants. But
Wow.
yeah, it just gives me a great perspective on today, because listen, the problem most people have is they quit too early because they've never experienced pain before, and it's like, hey, we're resilient as individuals, as humans, and there's a lot more pain that you can take that you don't think that you can take. And most often people quit at the first sign of just a little bit of pain. And it's like, what does it take to be successful? It's like going through pain and waking up and working harder than you did yesterday for, no results, or to end up going backwards and treading water, like a lot of us have experienced over the last 2
Mm,
years with the pandemic. So
yeah.
I've been kind of conditioned my whole life to
Yeah.
take adversity. And so I think that's why I always like to say my power was the disadvantage that I grew up with.
Wow. So much resilience there. I'm curious. We have, with our upbringings, a motivation or like a push from our ancestor to pursue a different career. With that toxic family background that you mentioned, was there any push to pursue a certain career from your family, or was that certainly just yourself?
No, it definitely was just me. I mean, my father always really cared about sports, and that was, he was pretty short-sighted. So all he really cared about was like the next game. And
Mm,
yeah, he wanted me to be successful. I think probably deep down, my mother, who I don't have a relationship with today, she left when, we came back to Michigan. Um, I had worked like 3 summers, like with my dad and my uncles, with a pitchfork on the roofs, just ripping off tar paper and
mm,
being their gopher for all the electrical jobs, odd end jobs
mm.
that they would do on the weekend. And I saved up enough money to go to a car auction and buy my own car. I bought a white Pontiac Grand Am with my own money.
Wow.
And dude, I mean, it's a crazy story, but I went to a baseball tournament. I went to the USSSA World Series in Kissimmee, Florida, and we all drove down. My mom stayed back. My brother stayed back. My dad actually went with us. And, I came back and my car's gone, my brother's gone, and my mom's gone. And
Oh,
my dad
wow.
has like sugar in his gas tank. So she basically sold my car that I had paid for moving money, and then took my little brother and jetted and left town. So I haven't really had a relationship with her since then.
Mm,
But I would think that somewhere down deep in her heart, and I want to believe that, she just she wants me to be successful, and I don't think that she's vindictive toward me at all. And from like a mother-son relationship, I just think that, you can't take responsibility for a family or for your community until you're willing to take responsibility for yourself.
mm.
I always tell people, like, clean your car before you go out and try to tell people what to do,
Yeah.
because you gotta be able to lead yourself before you can lead others. And I think my mom got caught in like this vicious trap of the party life, and
Mm,
it ended up, like clouding her vision in a sense, like clouding her judgment and her ability to prioritize in life.
mm,
And so, yeah, I think they want me to be successful. I know my dad wants me to be successful now. I still have a relationship with my dad.
mhm.
He's gotten better, but he's still Al Klein.
Definitely. So I'm curious, if you don't mind, I know this has shaped a lot of who you are today. Just more elaboration on this. What was your time like in college? Central Michigan on scholarship, a family background that you're really in college alone, no support behind you, really. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah. So, I grew up on welfare, and, we called it food stamps back in Michigan. And
Yeah.
so, that was one of the ways that I was able to play college sports. So in baseball, you don't necessarily get a full ride like you do in basketball or you do in football, because, the sport doesn't have as much money as those other two sports. And so a lot
Mm,
of the, especially at the mid-major schools, what they're giving out, are, partial scholarships. So I ended up coming in with a 60% and worked my way to a 75%. Um, but at the end of the day, that still left me with needing, you have school
yeah.
and you have baseball. That's a full-time job when you're at the field every day in the fall, for morning workouts, and then you go to class all day long, and then you got study hall, especially as like freshman, sophomore.
Yeah.
So I ended up staying on then it transitioned to a bridge card in Michigan. So I ended up staying on that, because if I didn't, I didn't have any money. There was no other choice for me, really, and that's all I knew at the time.
Mm,
My father ended up going to prison when I was my sophomore year of baseball.
mm,
And it was pretty disappointing, because that's when I started to play a lot. And, he wanted to see me be successful. Well, he had this hit and run accident that, he didn't handle very well. And it was, an offense that had compounded over time. And they
mm,
said enough was enough. And he went to Jackson State Penitentiary in Michigan. So
mm.
I stayed on, and then this is crazy. This is crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So I also, I never said this on a podcast before. No one's really asked me that. I also would give plasma. So I would literally every week,
Wow.
I would get $100 every week. I still have the scar. I would go and I would donate plasma. I'd sit there for an hour, and that was like my discretionary income, and I couldn't, with practice in school, I couldn't necessarily get a job. I was eating good. I was growing. I was lifting. I was getting heavier. My goal was to make it to the big leagues. I mean, since I was like a little baby boy, I have a picture when I was like 3 or 4 years old, swinging a bat in the front yard. My dad always wanted to be me to be a baseball player.
Yeah.
He was the Detroit Tiger. He was a super good athlete, McDonald's All-American basketball player,
Wow.
and had full rides to Xavier, and ended up blowing it. And
Mm,
so I had like this, carry the torch forward mentality. And for my dad, all he cared about was, not all, I would say, but most of what he cared about was sports. And
yeah.
so, for me, I was always really driven by like the sports metrics, and I'd, get $100 here and there for, scoring over 30 points or throwing a no hitter or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And, I think that conditioned me in a sense to want to hit what he did and do more.
Mm,
And so I worked my butt off to get to that level, right?
definitely.
Through college, I was the hardest worker in the room. Still am the hardest worker in the room today, but it changed when I got to the professional ranks. And this is so important. If we have time you have time for another
Yeah.
story.
Of course.
So I think it's so important to really take this the following lesson away, is that you've never made it,
Mm,
right? There's no such thing as making it, because when I when I went to college, I was an animal. Like there was nothing I wasn't willing to do to get time on that field, so that I could ultimately reach the dream of making the big leagues that I had my entire life.
yeah.
So I finally do it. It happens. I go to the Northwoods League, which is like a collegiate baseball league in the Midwest,
Hmm.
and have a lights out summer. And the Giants signed me on spot. They give me a great package, some money that I was like, oh, okay, that's you want to give me that to throw a baseball? Okay. I mean, it wasn't like game changing, for my
Yeah.
life, but it was game changing for my life at the time.
Of course.
And they paid for my school and to finish up, because I dropped out early to go play ball. Well, in my mind, it was like, I just signed a contract that says San Francisco Giants professional organization on the top of it. And I didn't know it at the time, but like in my head, I must have been saying to myself, man, you made it. Like
Mm.
you're signing a contract right now with the team that you've been wanting to play for your entire life. You made it. And what I started doing from there, I started messing around, screwing around, going out late, not taking it serious. My work ethic went from like, I'm going to be an animal in the gym every day to like,
Yeah.
oh, it's okay to take a day off here and there. Like you made it. I got comfortable. I started relaxing. My temperature went from like burning hot to like room temp.
Mm.
And for me, it was something I realized when I was about 30 or 31 that I was following in the same footsteps as my dad, because he went and got a Detroit Tigers offer and he went and started playing. He started doing the same stuff, right? Screwing
Yeah.
around, partying, not taking it seriously. And so I remember I came home one night, we were in Charleston playing the Charleston River Dogs, and buddy had a birthday. We went out. It's like a Tuesday, right? Like we're going to the whiskey bar and like we get back, and I'll never forget the moment where my coach, which by the way, the director of San Francisco Giants baseball operations, was in Charleston to watch us play. And I was dogging everybody. I mean, I was playing really well.
Yeah.
And the coach, as we walk in at 2:53 a.m. and I'm leading the pack, I see coach like staring at me, and like when your parents might be really, really mad at you and they're so mad that they don't say anything besides go,
Yeah.
like basically what he did. Like, I'm so disappointed with you. Just go to your room. Like, that you're not supposed to be messing around. We have a game. Baseball ops is in town. You're probably going to play one of the next 3 games. I was a reliever at the time. And I got released the following season, because who wants to have some, mid-major college kid come in and, not work hard and think they're entitled and think that they've made it and, and then walk around like that. And I was poisoning my teammates. I was a leader naturally. So I was always taking people out with me and stuff like that. And, that's why I say never settle. Right. And don't ever think that you've made it, because the minute you think you've made it is the minute that you cool down. And the minute that you cool down is the minute you become vulnerable. And the minute you could become vulnerable, especially in business, is the minute that someone else is coming up from behind you, they're going to take your job.
Yeah.
And, I always remember that today, like regardless of whatever success that people perceive that we've made, our dreams and goals are much, much bigger than that on purpose. Because I know if I ever feel like I've reached my goals, that my mentality is that I would relax a little bit, and I always want to be chasing the next level.
Definitely. Such a bizarre experience, that transition there. So you have a wake-up call from your coach. Where does your mind shift from there? And where do you end up moving and transitioning to? You're off the league by then.
Yeah. At the time, my mind was like, whatever, coach. Like, I'm going to come out and I'm going to, go 1, 2, 3 in the 9 for you tomorrow. And we're going to call this good. And my mentality wasn't that they were looking at my characters, that they're just looking at my skill. And then I came back the next season and they released me. I walked into the same director of baseball operations office, and he said, "Hey, we appreciate you in your short time here with the Giants, but, we're releasing you today. So here's your plane ticket, see ya." And my mindset from that moment was like, it was pretty devastating, if I'm honest, because what you're running from is more important than what you're running to.
Yeah.
And what I was running from, and here's why, because what you're running from, you've already experienced, and you can feel the pain from that if you've chosen the right thing to run from based on your past experience. You don't quite know what the feeling is of what you're running to, or what your vision is, or what that's going to feel like when it's manifest. But you already have had manifest a experience in what you're trying to run from. And so for me, those flashbacks and that pain of like, I was flashing back to those nights where I'm like a young 12-year-old kid having to be the man of the house, getting in fist fights with a grown man, and listening to him, getting fist fights with his wives and his women. And it's like, I would bury my head under the pillow sometimes, and just, and, you would flash back to those types of moments, that had a sense of an emotional embossment in my life, like from my childhood. And you automatically start navigating back to that version of yourself because there's no exciting version of the future anymore. And so if you're not, that's why you hear people left and right saying, "Hey, have a purpose, have a mission, have a vision." Anybody that's going to give you advice, is because that excitement, that enthusiasm, that energy that's created from that vision is going to keep you moving forward. It's going to keep a positive vision of what you're trying to accomplish rather than snapping back to that negative one. So I didn't realize it in the moment. If I'm honest with you, it wasn't until I was 30, 31 where I realized, like, hey, dummy, like, don't take for granted the opportunities that you're given just because you desired it. Like, just because you had a desire doesn't mean that you're entitled to anything. And I kept moving forward. I called Morgan. I'm like, Morg, she's in Naples, Florida at the time. This is my wife. We're basically co-CEOs. Like, she's the COO and I'm the CEO, but we call the shots. We work very, very well together. We have a team of 11 senior vice presidents and vice presidents that run operations for our multiple businesses. And, she had always been that rock for me because we had met when we were 12. So she saw all of these things growing up. You feel me?
You married? Yeah. Were you married in this period as well?
Yeah, we got married when we were 26.
Okay.
No, yeah. We got married when we were 26.
Yeah.
And so we were not married at the time when I got released. No,
Okay.
we weren't. So I moved. So then I got released. Figured that, like, hey, this woman that has been with me all these years, that was like, I was dead broke. Like I mentioned, like she was paying my cell phone bill when I was 20, 21, because if she didn't, then she wouldn't be able to talk to me because I couldn't pay it. I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And so I have this now this built-in reciprocity for Morgan. And that's just one example of all of the things that her and her family did for me as I was going through it. And at the end of the day, like, now what drives me more than anything, and that purpose I'm talking about, is not only a vision for my children and our children that is running far away and hard away from the childhood that I grew up with and trying to give them the exact opposite contrast, but to repay Morgan every single day in perpetuity for the things that she did for me, because she saved my life. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'd be somewhere in a gutter right now because I was a bad kid. I was like, me telling you a little story about how I went out, like I was a hard worker, don't get me wrong. And I was a leader and I was dedicated to sports. But outside of that, I wasn't supervised very much. And when you don't have money and you're not supervised and you come from where I come from, you end up getting into some things I'd rather not revisit. But
definitely.
My mindset was like, keep moving, like, what are you going to do next? And I really looked to Morgan for that. And we decided that, hey, my baseball days were done and that I wasn't passionate about it anymore. And she helped me find my true passion.
If you can further elaborate on that passion that you find with Morgan, and I know that turns into Burn Boot Camp as we know today, where does this inspiration come to start promoting and teaching fitness?
Yeah, it started really in college and professional baseball, where I would travel and stay with host families. And I never knew it in the moment. You don't really know these things. You're a young 20-something, like a late teenager. I'm not thinking about the future. All I'm thinking about is, where am I going to eat next? And did I, what was my ERA today? And is that good enough to make it to the next level, right?
Yeah.
So, and retrospectively, you're looking back and saying, all right, what was the set of circumstances that really led to this? And in reflection, it was definitely 100% correlated with me visiting host families, because I explained a little bit about my family growing up. And listen, I always thought this was normal. I knew no other exposure, right? I just thought it was normal to come from the life that I came from, because some of the friends that I was hanging around, especially early on, when I got in high school, I got in a better crowd, but early on I was hanging around, families that were similar. And so I always thought it was kind of normal until I got out into the real world and realized that the host families that I'm staying with, I've always been a very emotionally intelligent and self-aware person, self-aware of my own thoughts, my own feelings, but also, to those around me, and really empathetic just naturally. And so I always felt this reciprocity to kind of repay my host families for taking me in. Like I mentioned, like I was doing my own laundry, setting my own alarms, making my own food at 12 years old,
Wow.
So it's like getting to a family where they're doing all that stuff for you. I'm like, okay, this is what it's about. And then, I wasn't necessarily a technically, naturally skilled and talented athlete. It was more some good natural raw skills layered on really disciplined hard work. I gained 30 pounds of muscle from the time I was a sophomore in high school to my sophomore year of college.
Wow.
which gave me a lot of velocity behind my ball. And I work for every ounce of that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for the government programs, because I wouldn't have been able to get the calories and the nutrition that I needed to be an athlete at a high level if it wasn't for that.
Mm.
The host family situation ended up being the spark of inspiration that I needed, because inside of those host families, I mentioned, I was kind of aware of my surroundings. I felt the reciprocity to give back to them. And the only way I knew how to do that was to help them out. And so I'd show, especially if a family that I was with in Wyoming, when I played some college ball out there, is my favorite time. They stuck, her name was the DeHolt family. Shout out DeHolt family, Nicole DeHolt. They shoved like 6 baseball players in their, beautiful but tiny 1,200 square foot house with like 3 kids, a newborn baby. They were baseball fanatics. They loved the Fort Laramie Colts, which was the summer team.
Wow.
And, I would run to the weight room every day, and then I'd run back, and then I'd, eat my breakfast and do my thing. And oftentimes I would even run to the field, and it was just like a half mile or a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And she was inspired by it. And, instead of like, I needed to eat egg whites, I needed to eat oatmeal, I needed to eat good nutritious food that could help me take advantage of my workouts and gain lean muscle mass to get velocity behind the ball. Well, I needed to teach them how Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Krispies weren't going to help me. And then so through that natural process of educating them, and then starting to work out with Nicole and really started to transform her life. You got to see transformations with some of my host families over the summer, at least inspiration at the very least. And then looking back on it, it's like, wow, what lights me up besides throwing a white ball across green grass? Well, helping people realize their potential and how much energy they could have. That's a close second, because especially the DeHolt family, like they started off the beginning of the summer, a little tensious, a little irritated, a little annoyed with each other, a little annoyed in the household.
Yeah.
By the end of the summer, different mentality. I was like, aha, changing the body changes the mind. It's not the other way around. You don't think about push-ups and they happen.
Yeah.
Right? You do the push-ups, and then the confidence happens as a byproduct of the physical fitness. So that's a long-winded answer to your question. That is where the original source of inspiration came from.
Yeah. And
then you let it grow, right? And we let it grow. We let it grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And now, from 2015, when we launched our franchise model and we had, maybe $500,000 of revenue, we're chasing down 200 million this year. And
it's amazing.
And it's a really good feeling. And I get to do it with who I love. Our family owns the company. I'm proud of that. Like I'm not ever taking like outside money off the table or outside equity or interest off the table, especially public interest. But at the end of the day, it's like, if we can get this far and it's our baby and there's no one else helping us call the shots, the only downside to that is we don't have experience, right? So Morgan and I are constantly banging the phones. We're constantly calling people who know more than we do. What we have to add is we can help people who have a lot of business experience much more than us. We can help them maximize that with their health and their fitness, and some easy principles that we've been able to use that can help them incorporate fitness into an already busy, go-getter, high-driven lifestyle.
Definitely.
And what I found early on is like, hey, you always have a value to give. And with that value, if it's enough value, you can get a hold and you can talk to anyone that you need to talk to, because they will want something that you have as well. And to me, that's what a mentorship is when you have two people that both have something that each other wants, that can collaborate and conspire in a way to help each other get to that next level. So everyone's my mentor in a sense. And that's how I'm getting all the information for me to be able to scale up a global franchise development game plan, and, get to 500 units in the United States awarded domestically. We just opened our 332nd in South Sarasota, Florida.
Wow.
on this week. So
it's amazing.
It's crazy. We're like, 7 years in now of, we just had our 10-year anniversary since the LLC was born, before we even ran a camp, which was last week. And I always tell people, it's so incredible what you can do in a decade. So, I would continue to say, overestimate what you can do in a year, and continue to set your goals higher than you think is feasible and attainable. And if you shoot for the cloud, you fall on the ground. But if you shoot for the stars, you fall in the clouds. And so anytime you over aim, it's okay if you don't get to your goals. You don't need to know how to get to your goals. And it's not even about the arbitrary goal in the first place. It's about the pursuit and the activity that you would have to align to in order to be a person who reaches that goal, even if you fall a little bit short. But the character drive that you get and that you have, and the personality you have to acquire is different. You have to become a whole new person. So, we're setting our goals high. We're going to continue to set them high. Our 10-year vision's to the moon, which who the hell knows where we're going to be in 10 years. I didn't think we'd be here 10 years ago. So not going to waste any time on that. Just to the moon, like dream big enough to fit all the dreams of everyone in our organization inside of that dream. And I think that's a good way to set a 10-year vision. But I know my 3-year vision, and I'm hawking that down, and I'm trying to, I have 50. Here's one little point. I know I'm going crazy right now.
This is perfect.
One little thing that I like to do that might be helpful for those of you guys starting out there would be to take your 3-year vision. You have like your 1-year game plan, right? And you know the KPIs that you need to be hitting. Like if you don't know KPIs and you're in business, then you're in the wrong business, because the business of business is the language in the scorecard, which is finance and accounting, which you need to understand if you're going to start a business. So your KPIs in year 1, you're tracking those, right? And you're tracking those with strategy, and you're numerically, quantitatively getting to those numbers. Well, in your 3-year plan, that's like your strategy, right? So in my 3-year plan, I call it the next 15 moves. I read a book once that said, hey, the best chess players in the world, they're 15 moves ahead. Good ones are 10 moves ahead. Normal, everyday, average Joes in your park are 5 moves ahead. And I thought that was pretty profound. And so I took that initially and said, okay, what's my next 3 years look like? I'm going to map out specifically exactly what I'm going to accomplish and the day that I'm going to accomplish it. And then there's one last rule. Then you work to the first thing first, the first point first, and you get that done as fast as you can, right? Even if it's before your date. And then the next thing as fast as you can, and the next one. And that's guiding my everyday outcomes, my every week outcomes. Those are my rocks. And then, obviously all the pebbles are filling in the rest of my time. But that's exactly it, right? That 3-year plan for you, it doesn't necessarily need to always come to fruition, but you have to set a 3-year vision for yourself, and it's got to be concrete because you're going to end up somewhere. And you do not want to end up in a place that you didn't design. So you got to design the blueprint if you're going to then want to build the home to the specs, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Incredible. I'm curious then, when you're expanding into other franchises, what do you look for in a franchisee or franchisor when building that new location? I'm curious from your point of view.
I look for them to already be walking, talking, acting, and behaving like they're already doing the job. Are they working out every day? Are they already, are they already committed to this? Like one thing that I'm looking for that I don't like is if somebody's shopping other brands, I want nothing to do with you. If you're going to try to compare us to like an Orange Theory or you want to open a CrossFit box or, you're going to compare us to like an F45. I'm not interested in you, because that to me is showing lack of commitment and dedication. And when you're in a relationship business, your dedication to the brand is much more important than it is when you're in just a product business. Definitely. At least in my opinion. And that's not 100% the case in every scenario, obviously, but generally speaking, you're working and interacting and creating relationships with people, and you have to have been influenced by the brand yourself in order for you to transfer that experience to make other people feel that way.
Definitely.
And so 95% of our franchise partners, they were members first. And dude, I've had institutional investors come to me who own other giant brands, like in our space in fitness franchising, and offered to buy like the, let's say, call it master rights to states at a time. For big checks at a time when we were reinvesting every dollar we had into the business, and those big checks were really intriguing. Right. And, I hope you guys out there get the passion and the dedication, the discipline on your brand and the belief in yourself that you can say no when something looks so good. Because if I would have sold my soul back then, we would not be here today. I guarantee that, because the fabric of the brand being so small, back when this happened in 17, 18, the fabric of the brand would have completely shifted. The reason we are who we are is because we do what we love with who we love.
Mm,
And those people who we love are also doing what they love.
definitely.
And it's the passion that's driving it. Now, right? I'll pull a Howard Schultz metaphor. Like, you got to walk the tightrope of culture versus profit. You
Mm,
can't have people in your organization that are only rah, 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 and they're cheerleading and they're excited and they're motivated, but they don't know the language of business, like we talked about, right?
yeah,
They're going to fall off the tightrope on the way to get to the next goal, and they're going to get killed, like most businesses do. And that's a big downfall, right? But then the other side of that is, if you're only looking at profit and you're sterile and rigid and cold-hearted and you have no empathy, well, then nobody's going to want to do business with you and interact with you. So there's
definitely.
this tightrope that we all walk as entrepreneurs of profit versus culture. And there's some decisions that you're going to have to make for profit. And
Mm,
absolutely 100%. Like, profit is arguably more important because you can't build the culture without the doors being open, in a sense, right?
yeah,
Metaphorically. So if you don't have a bottom line, you don't have margin, like, what do you cheerlead? What do you rooting forward? What's all that excitement and energy pouring into? But then if you don't have that culture, right, it's like, at the end of the day, you're not going to have any margin because no one wants to deal with you. So
yeah.
if I think the last point to that is the deposits, especially in a large brand. We have 4,500 people. Well, I would
Wow.
describe as, employees, staff, team members, whatever way you want to language it. We call them our people,
Yeah.
franchise partners, their teams, HQ, our HQ gyms. Um, you know, we look at profit and culture as if you would make a decision for profit, because
Mm,
sometimes you have to, that you need 10x the amount of deposits on the culture side in order to offset something that might be completely profit driven, right? So
yeah.
the equitable balance is not, like, the balance is not there in profit versus culture. You got to pour into the culture a lot more than you're going to have to pour into to the profit side, but nonetheless a tightrope. And, we're walking that constantly today. And yeah, I'll credit Howard Schultz, one of my heroes, for that, because he's the person that really told me, he really taught me that a kid, because he's from the Bronx, right? He's
Yeah.
from like the projects. Like, I grew up across the street from the projects. His dad, broke his legs, when he was delivering diapers as a low-end diaper delivery guy in the 70s, where he didn't get workers' comp, and he watched his dad's American dream slip away from him. I watched my dad's sports dream slip away from him
Mm,
for things that were under his control. And, I've always been inspired by Howard Schultz. So I want to give credit where credit's due, but I love that metaphor because it's so true. And if entrepreneurs understood the tightrope, they would be able to navigate success and then the empathy required to be successful and to have influence and have people follow you, I think, more accurately.
amazing. So as we wrap things up, your journey with resilience from the upbringing you came from and to today, such amazing growth. It's super impressive. I'm curious, what does the day-to-day look like for Devan Kline, for yourself as CEO at the HQ?
Yeah, I don't need an alarm. That's for sure. I'm excited every day. I'm getting up early. I'm up in the 4 a.m. hour. I do have an alarm as a backup,
Yeah.
but I usually wake up before it. And, in the 4 a.m. hour, sometimes it goes off at 5. And I'm usually in the gym by 5:30 whether I'm on the road a lot. So I'm either
Mm,
at a gym on the road, or I'm here at our flagship at Lake Norman, just here north of Charlotte. I'll go back home. I'll see my kids off to school real quick. And, Morgan really tries to give me that morning space to get my head right and to really do my job to lead the family
mhm.
and lead myself first. Right. And so then she's right on the other side of this wall here, and we come to the office, or we're either in the gym or working with a franchise partner in some type of training or some type of site visit. And we're hammering it out all day long,
Mm,
7:30, 8 a.m. to definitely 6 p.m. when I'm home. If I'm not home, I'm going straight through the night until I fall asleep
yeah.
around 11. But when I'm home, 6 to 8 o'clock for her and I, both non-negotiable. That's our family time.
Yeah.
We're super engaged. We don't have our phones with us. We don't have our email with us. We're fully engaged in play and activity and interests of our children. We sit down and we try to have family dinner as much as possible. And when the kids go back to bed, which we divide and conquer 50-50, they go to bed, and her and I she's right back on the computer. I'm right back on writing or whatever it is that I like. I like to do creative things at night.
Yeah.
And she likes to catch up from the day, and then we'll connect with each other if need be. And then, we try to shut it down with some personal time for like the last half an hour of the night before we fall asleep. And so
Mm.
do we always get it? No. Is it always perfect? No, but we hold each other accountable to that. And, we definitely put our relationship and our family time, in just as much importance as we do our business and the responsibility we have for our community and our families that are members or our people.
Amazing. Well, Devan, thank you so much for taking the time. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Burn Bootcamp at burnbootcamp.com.